Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about the opinions and possible outcomes of Darkest Dungeon 2, about the new mechanics and game structure. I'm having here a discussion with Shufflefm, and many of you know him as a Darkest Dungeon YouTube channel, but he also does other games such as Slay the Spire, and also is currently playing Iratus Lord of the Dead. His Darkest Dungeon videos usually range from guides to fun videos, Butcher Circuits content, and just general entertaining questions. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, besides, that was a great intro. I feel so welcomed and introduced. My God.
Yeah, no issue, no problems here. So I'm just going to start it off with, we do have a few, I guess I'll call them pre-structured questions, but that's just to mostly keep us on track. And I think to hit the main points, wherever we may venture is essentially whatever. This isn't rather open discussion. And probably around, I think we agreed the 50 minutes to hour mark. If we feel like we need another video, so be it. But probably expect a range maybe hour to hour 15. All right, so I'll ask you first, how do you feel about the new 5-story act/structure they added to the game?
Okay, so I'm gonna start by saying that I think I've seen a lot of people that are hesitant about what they've seen in the new game, and that's fine. I understand. I'm definitely like excited for what I see, so that's where my bias is coming from. Just so I'm out of the way on that. But as far as the 5 act story goes, I think the way I understood it, because when they said that sentence in the article, I didn't quite understand it at first. I had to ask for help. I was like, what does this mean? And it sounds like the end of the game, the mountain part, I think that's what's going to have 5 different acts to it. So it's going to be like 5 end game bosses or something like that. And it changes each time you do it. I think this is an interesting way to do it. I can't say if I like it more or less than the previous game, but I'm excited to see where it goes, but I'm not like 100% sold on it because one of the things I liked in the first game was that the darkest dungeon is just open to you at the start of the game. It's actually pretty intimidating to see that you can just walk into the end of the game at any point. It's just up to you to choose one, and that just makes it a little more scary. But I don't know. I think it's a new direction, so I'll see what they do with it, but I can't say if I'm excited or scared of it right now.
See, that's really interesting because I guess I took 5-act story in the sense of the first 4 are kind of like levels that you witness in like Hades, Iratus, and I'm not as familiar with Slay the Spire, but I know you progress up a ladder essentially. So I thought the first 4 acts would, and I have no idea as well, but I thought that would kind of be like your Weald, your Warrens, your Ruins, your Cove, and then the 5th act would be your like darkest dungeon. But that is interesting. Maybe you do have just the generic gameplay, and then eventually, once you want to finish the game, you do kick off that quote unquote 5-act story structure. So actually, I didn't even think about that initially from the article.
I think it could be what you're saying as well. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm since I have it right in front of me, I'll read it back to you as my cat eats
Yeah,
food out
go
of a
for it.
bowl,
Yep.
which is awesome. But okay, so it says the 5 act story with each act bringing a new boss fight or a new boss to fight when you reach the mountain, and it'll launch with Act 1. But it said you can also beat the game in the early access. So between those two statements, I think that means that the end of the game is what changes each time. But I could be wrong, but that is how I have understood it.
No, and that would make sense as well. That is a nice word to pick up on. So I guess the next question would argue then, do we have a normal style Darkest Dungeon in the beginning then, where you essentially just do random dungeons and shuffle around in your cart until you're ready? Would that be the natural response to that?
I wouldn't mind if it was that, but I don't think that's what we're gonna get, just because it's the road trip type of mechanic. I would like it if you could backtrack and go to previous places and stuff and take it at your own pace. But with the comparisons to things like Hades and Slay the Spire and Faster Than Light, I think it was another one they compared it to. I wouldn't be surprised if you just do whatever you can in the current region and then you just go forward. But I wouldn't mind if you can go back, but it may just be a forward progression type of thing.
Yeah, because that is interesting that they would kind of say it's like a 5-act, but to have then the normal campaign takes like, what did they say, about 7 hours? And I don't know if that 7 hours they said is going to be for the new player or once you get good at the game kind of thing, because that will be interesting.
I doubt it's gonna be 7 hours once. Like, I think that is for the new player experience, but I think once you have the game down, you're gonna be seeing clears in like 3 hours, probably less than that.
Yeah, and I have a feeling most of that time being taken up is going to be potentially the caravan and people talking, unless that's something you can kind of skip. Driving the cart, the caravan around is probably not skippable, but I'm wondering how much you can avoid these new relationships, which we will definitely get to later in the game. But I'm wondering how much those will bog down time once you start figuring out the process to climb, essentially.
It's a good point. I definitely think if you can skip the dialogue, there are going to be people that skip it. They're like, I don't want the lore in this game. Just let me, fight monsters. But I think the relationship thing, it probably will take a lot of time. It'll probably take almost as much time as the battles because I could see players getting to points where they have to think about what they're doing, read each response from each hero, and then decide accordingly.
Yeah, I would agree. I know they wanted to emphasize the people in this game. As I said, we will get to that soon. It might just naturally flow into that. So actually, I'm just going to kind of go into it now since I think we mostly agree that it could go either way. It could be just like a faster than light to me has just 4 levels of preparation, and then you essentially get thrown to the boss. I Hades is essentially the same way. Pretty much any of your typical roguelikes. That's what I was envisioning. So I doubt they will go the you get like 3 or 5 hours to get your items, and then once you're good, then you progress. But it's possible. But it doesn't sound like they really have resolve in this game, right?
Resolve in what way? Like levels? Like resolve levels and
Yeah,
leveling up? Yeah, I don't think
if
so either.
because since they got rid of the equipment and your heroes sound like they solely rely on skill leveling and trinkets, I assume resolve is going to be essentially a non-factor, right?
It might be. And there were a lot of people, myself included, that were hoping that the game would get more RPG elements, so like more dials to turn, essentially. So if they're going backwards with leveling up, I think that would be initially a mistake. But who knows, it might work in what they're doing. But I would like it if you can still level up and get a couple like stat increases and at least feel more powerful than you were previously.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering. I do agree with that. That would be my preferred way the game to go. But I'm just trying to think because it sounds like they really wanted to focus on trinkets, which I think is a great thing because I've done a couple trinket videos. You've done a whole trinket review, like you threw up every single one on a tier video.
Yeah, that was a
Um,
mistake.
and about what you'd say, like what 90-95% of them, you're like, I mean, sure they exist, right? Like 9 out of 10 trinkets, like I could care less if I got them. They're just cash.
Yeah, I mean, once you get the better trinkets to replace them with, they're definitely in that type of category. The only time that even the weaker trinkets feel remotely valuable is like you don't have anything else. Where sometimes brawler's gloves are the answer.
Right.
I'm gonna
Yes.
put them on in a lot of cases, but sometimes I don't have focus ring or ancestor pen or dismiss head or something. It's just
Right. I
I
say
can
it's
use
out of
this.
necessity. Yeah. No, so I think that's where because and when I was thinking about it was like if you play Butcher's Circus, essentially same resolve against same resolve, but if you don't put on any trinkets, you feel just horribly weak. And even if you do have trinkets, but you've played against someone who has all of them, you still feel relatively weak. So I wonder if Circus kind of opened their eyes. They're like, hey, we can not worry about the leveling system because the characters will quote unquote level with better trinkets. That's just a thought. I have no idea. I could be beyond wrong on that.
I think it's a really smart idea though, because it could be. There are a lot of things where it may seem like Butcher Circus was kind of the test run, like enemies having death blow. I think that was the test run in Circus because your enemy got death blow in there.
Hmm.
I think trinkets in Circus are a good example because they're massively powerful, and even new players who pick up Circus, they go, "I fought this dude at champion, and they had all the level 70 trinkets or whatever, and I just got my butt stomped." So I think the trinkets, I think you'll see a range of power level in the trinkets because I don't know, I can't remember if you played Slay the Spire, but
I
uh,
did. I did a couple of times way off camera, but yeah, I wasn't very good at it. I'll just preface that.
okay. I played that game for like 200 hours and I am still garbage. That game is actually pretty hard to master, I feel like. But The relics in that game, they're pretty much akin to trinkets, I think, and they have different pools. So they have like common, uncommon, and like rare, and some can only come from bosses and stuff. So I wouldn't be
Okay.
surprised if some of the stronger things that you find are like boss specific. I think that could make it fun because sometimes, because they're saying like certain regions will pop up in each playthrough or whatever. So it'll be like sometimes the cove shows up and sometimes it doesn't. But if I run this
Yeah.
character, maybe I want the cove boss trinket and I can't get it this time.
Yeah, and that is entirely possible as well. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what they do with trinkets. I do hope they actually reduce them because I think way long ago now, maybe year and a half ago, in one of my prediction videos, I think I said I wanted trinkets to be more meaningful because there was just a lot of stuff. Like they made them, they're like, well, for this person, it's like, meh. Like you have like three different trinkets that boost HP, and you can get them all around the same time. So it's like, do I really care? So I think this was a good direction for the game, and I'm interested to see how they hand out trinkets. I do agree with you. Bosses will be obviously the kind of like the first one, to be honest. Bosses will hold the ones you really want to get, and then I'm wondering how good these other hidden were off the path ones, because I know they said if you keep pushing you can get a trinket, but at what cost kind of thing. So I'm wondering if those are going to be almost ever be worth it, or if there's only one that randomly drops out of 10. You're just sitting there, you go, well, I'm 2 rooms away, is it worth it? So it'll be curious in the beginning how much new players value trying to get trinkets until they realize they may not be worth it.
That's a great point to bring up too, because I think that one of the things in Darkest Dungeon 1 that they really tried to emphasize and a lot of players struggle with, even if you're good at the game, is just you have to make choices at a lot of points, and sometimes those choices seem small, sometimes they seem very meaningful. Like sometimes your party could have two afflicted heroes and it's got 3 battles to go before you're out of there, and it's like, do I really push this? In the new game, they're talking about, like you just said, if we go a bit further, maybe we can get that one good trinket. So I do share that sentiment that I hope that the trinkets themselves are probably more like fewer of them, so less numerical value, but then each one is slightly stronger to compensate, especially with the lack of gear upgrades, which I'm pretty sure we're gonna talk about later anyway. So having trinkets be that much more important, I think they have to be a bit fewer, but also like a lot stronger to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, I think so. Now, just for a fun side offshoot, this is absolutely early access. So many of the stuff we say here could be reversed on, could be
Yes.
branched off, but I think we're starting off with stuff that is going to be, I'd argue, pretty concrete. I doubt the game will find a way to like demolish that 5-story act. Like that is so imprinted in the game, design heavy. They'd have to make a new game. So like that's not going away. The amount of trinkets is probably not going away. They will tinker maybe based on drop rates and what they do, but I think those things will stay the same. But something I could see them adding if they get enough, not backlash, but maybe a lot of people miss it, is the armors and stuff an upgrade. And I didn't actually put this in my original predictions video. I think it would have been cool if they gave you like even at a minimal 2 sets, and one was like this is the tanky leper, or this is like the quick speed, high damage but low accuracy leper or something. I think that would have been a lot of fun. Something simple. I don't think it would have taken a lot of programming, but would really allow certain characters to not be like I'm just damage or I'm just protection kind of thing.
I totally agree. And actually, when I started, like when I learned that gear can't be upgraded and I thought about it more, I went back and I looked at the first game and I was thinking, how impactful is gear? Gear's very impactful in the first game, but it's just like incremental stat increases. You get a little bit of
Yes. Yep.
HP, a little bit of dodge, and your weapons at like 3 and 5 get speed, which is probably the most impactful thing that happens. So I like if they take it away, I'm kind of let down at first, but at the same time, considering how incremental the increases were in the first game, I don't think I'll miss them that much. So it's either I'd rather they go full out, like you're saying, where you can just spec your character according to the gear, or if they take it away, like it'll feel funny at first, but I think I will personally get over it at some point.
Yeah, it would be significantly trivialized if there is a resolve based system where people do level up and they naturally get that HP, speed, and
Right.
well, there's not going to be dodge, which is something later we can talk about. But yeah, even if you just see a HP and speed increase as you resolve up, that is essentially taking the weapon from the first game, which is, the weapon, in my opinion, was like the only one you really needed, unless you had like an absolute glass cannon of a hero, such as like maybe a jester or someone. But at least in my campaigns, I always went weapon first because if you outspeed people, you just pretty much win fights.
You do. I was kind of like back and forth with my heroes. Usually I did armor at 2 and 4, and then I did weapons at like 3 and 5. That's usually how I prioritize it, but
Yeah,
it
that makes
really
sense. Yeah.
does. Yeah, with the first game though, it really is that if you go first and you hit harder and you kill them first, you're safer, and it doesn't really matter what your armor total is at that point, as long as you're cleaning up the fight quickly.
Yeah, and hence why I'm guessing Grave Robber is one of your more favorite players. The quick strike damage is certainly disgusting among the Grave Robber.
She is the This is a small aside here. The Grave Robber love is actually kind of a meme because
Oh, okay.
I made that horrible character tier list like 2 years ago, and
Oh,
people were
yeah.
like, "Why is Grave Robber like the top 5?" I went, "You know what? I'm just gonna double down on this character."
Oh, okay.
And it turns out she was actually pretty fun, and I actually think she's really good. She's pretty much a lunge bot at this point, but
Yes. Yep.
I think her ability to go first and erase like a rank 3 cultist switch, I think that is actually very valuable. So I do think she does deserve a top half of a tier list type of thing though at that point.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I know I got into hot water because I actually did the reverse of you. I think I put her in the like very middle, and people just ripped on me for the same reason you just said. I'm not saying you're ripping on me, but they're like, "Have you ever lunge critted someone for 60 in position 3?" I'm like, "Well, yeah," but I'm like, "But that's all she really does." I mean, it works well. I would never argue against it. I've used her to great success. It's just, you know. But I'm curious to see if we can actually segue that way in a little bit. I'm curious to see if like quick strike characters are going to be something, I guess, less emphasized if there's a death story. You know what I mean? It's like, who cares if you crit for 60 if you knock a 20 HP enemy down to death story? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I wonder if the new fighting style will be like, you don't always need someone to do like just crushing amount of damage if they're going to go to a death store. Like, the reason why I loved the leper in the first game was, go big or go home. And now that the leper can't miss, I may secretly love that. We'll see. But they got rid of the leper's worst deficiency. I can now no longer be made fun of for misses on a leper, which me personally I'm going to enjoy.
There's definitely a lot there. I think the this is again where I was saying I think Butcher Circus was kind of a test run where the enemy's having death blow. That does neuter things like turn one lunge and stuff like that. So that kind of stuff does get worse. Depending on how it works, I think that makes damage over time get a lot better because if pretty much the same reason the player dies to it, where it's like it's not so much getting crit for 25 down to death store, it's the fact I have a bleed on top of it that makes it even more threatening. So for the enemies, I think the same thing may be what happens, but with leper, gosh, I don't know. I gotta light up the people that say things like because leper miss, leper bad. Like leper,
Yeah, right.
you,
Yeah,
you gotta babysit leper a little bit, but once
you
you
do.
do, he just freaking wood chippers everything in front of him. So
Yeah,
um,
you either do a medium dungeon, get his camp buff, or you just accept the fact you're gonna need a jester. It's one of those two. You just say he needs a focus ring, he needs another buff for accuracy. Once you hit like the sweet spot of 110, you're like, he's okay.
yeah. The thing I might burst your bubble here. I think they said in the article they mentioned blind is a mechanic, and I think leper's gonna give
Yeah.
himself blind tokens for
Yeah,
some
I was
stuff.
wondering because they had something small and says, does he need glasses or something?
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if that was more of like a joke or if it was like after one swing he goes blind. So it'll be interesting.
I think it'll be a decent balancing thing, and it's still I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes because I don't know how blind works either. I don't know if you're like guaranteed to miss your next attack.
Or if it's like, because there's a couple of things where sometimes reading in an article you're like, what the heck does this even mean? Like when they said the word dodgy, I'm like,
Yeah.
Well, how dodgy is dodgy? And can they stack? Like, is each dodge token 10%, and then you can build up to like 5 dodge tokens, or is it like one dodge token's a 50% chance to
That's
dodge?
a good question. I didn't think of that because they did mention, I think, Grave Robber getting like 3 dodge tokens.
Which
And
yeah, and
yeah,
so
I
it's
didn't think
like,
of that. It could be like a stacking thing, or it could
yeah,
be 3 charges of like 50% dodge or something. That'll be pretty cool.
yeah. So that's why I know I sounded skeptical in my video about Darkest Dungeon 2. I am excited for it. It's just some things you can only get so much from an article, so I just need to get my hands on it and be like, okay, this was 1,000 times better than how it was presented or stated in the article. Because, I mean, I'm assuming, I keep butchering this poor guy's names. It's Barassa?
Barassa, Chris Barassa.
Barassa, okay. So I'm wondering how much he said, and then the editor was like, "Oh yeah, I'll just type that in," and then he might read that one day and be like, well, we really didn't say it that way, but we're okay with it. Like, it's not worth fighting over." So I'm wondering if there's any translation loss. Probably not, but it's possible.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I'm sure the reporter and maybe the editor took some liberties where needed. But I do, for anyone that hasn't read the article, I do think it's a pretty solid thing. There are some things where, like you and me right now are just going, what the hell's happening? And
Yeah,
there are those points, but for the entirety of the thing, if you want to see like the nice pictures and the stories they tell and stuff like that, I think it's worth at least reading the pinned Reddit thread at this point. I don't know if it's pinned anymore, actually, but yeah.
I haven't looked, so yeah, I'll have to defer to you on that. But yeah, so I just want to. So while we're talking about the pictures and stuff, though, what is your opinion on the art style of the game that they're heading into?
And that was a good segue. The the
Thank you.
art style is it feels like it's the most contentious thing here. Like this is the thing where people go either it's I'm not buying this game because of this, or they go like I'm excited to see it. With the art style for me, I was a little weirded out at first. I didn't like it initially, so I can understand the people that say they don't like it at all. And I don't know if it's just because I've looked at a lot of the promo art, because it feels like they've been coming this direction for a while. Because if you look at like the Crimson Court promo art, the characters are in this type of dimension, like normal sizes and stuff like that. So between that and having to read the article like 4 times at this point, I'm starting to get like used to it, so it doesn't bug me as much. There are a couple offenders. Actually, I do have a lot to say about the art, so I'm
Oh, keep
sorry for
going.
all.
Yeah, I'll let no. Keep going, please.
Okay, I'm sorry for soaking up time here, but
Oh, you're good.
the with the art, I look at 2 things. I look at the character models, which have a couple issues, and then I look at the stagecoach and like the town in the other pictures, and I think the stagecoach looks fantastic. I think the town looks really cool too. And so I'm thinking if they can make this stuff dogs, but yeah, if they can make this stuff look good, I trust the the models to look better over time. There are some that look strange. Like I'm not gonna lie, Man at Arms is just like a giant beetle or something at this point. Dismas, the Highwayman, he looks just
I'm glad you mentioned the Man at Arms, because the first thing I saw, and I'll let you continue, is just like he's a huge metal shell and he's got this like tiny little head on top. It just looks kind of funny.
yeah. It definitely looks weird. And the thing that keeps getting me is Dismas went from unparalleled finesse to NFL linebacker in a couple years. I don't know what the hell happened there. But then at the same time, characters like Leper and Jester and Occultist, I think they look fantastic, even in these like still shots. Like Leper specifically. I don't know, maybe I'm just wrong on this. I think Leper looks amazing. So I think if they can make a couple characters look good, even in the still frames, I'm hoping that once it's all in motion, it looks better, but it's really hard to say how good it's going to be without like actual gameplay at this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't mind the new art style so much. I do feel like it went a little, I guess a little. I don't play a lot of mobile games, but it felt a little it feels very rendered. It feels like it's completely out of place at moments. Like certain characters and enemies, you look at them, you're like, are you part of this game? You look like you're some 3D model dropped in. You're all shiny, you're all clean. And I think that's my biggest issue is it's like the first Darkest Dungeon, whether it was accident, lack of programming, or just resources, they looked kind of scruffed up. People didn't look clean. They had like tattered clothes. They weren't like the most like cut sharp. You felt like a ragtag group of people just trying to muddle your way through. This new one, like you said, it feels like you're jacked up, you're ready to go, everything's pristine and clean, you're shiny. It's like, but you said the end of the world's here / coming, and I look pristine. Like it just feels a little off-putting.
They got their Sunday best to meet the end of the world, I guess.
Right. So that's my biggest gripe. I would not. I will definitely buy the game even if I didn't have the channel, but I think over time, I'm hoping they kind of dull down some of the render where they add in a little bit of just like rag and tag essentially, because it's like everyone just looks too good. It's like you keep preaching about the end of the world, a little bit of nihilism, hard choices, but my characters don't look like they deserve. I don't know. It's nitpicking, but they really emphasized visuals. Hence why I think like a question or two on it, because the director really made points about how he essentially, I don't want to say disliked, but really wanted to get away from the first base game's character art. And that was surprising because it never screamed like, oh, I can't take this game seriously because my characters' heads are probably 1.5 to 2 times larger than they should be.
Yeah. It is weird to read that Barassa kind of goes back and forth on like what he made, but like I don't draw, I'm not an artist, so I can't say. Maybe like I have videos I look back on and I don't like that I've made, so maybe I guess that goes the same for art. But to give ammunition to anyone that wants to make the mobile comparison, since the game's in Unity, I looked this up. Apparently Unity is a very popular mobile game engine.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
Yeah, but I played other games in Unity, like PC games that I enjoyed. So I don't know. The like if I can be the resident shill in this case, if you were able to fall in love with like Darkest Dungeon 1's art, I would say at least give this a chance and see where it goes. Because if they can wow you the first time, maybe they can do it again. They may not. Who knows? And especially because how you were saying they don't like they look too pristine for what's been happening, especially like they're coming off of the first game where they, went through the Hamlet for basically a year and cleaned up everything and killed God at some point. Spoilers. But like
Right.
to do that and then come out of there looking, with some fresh duds and stuff like that, I can definitely see how it's out of place.
Yeah, no. And yeah, I mean I'll back that. Definitely don't buy well, okay. Do not buy the game. There we go. Because of the art. I think it is something, if you've played it, especially like you and me, where we've played it well over past 500 hours, you're just really accustomed to the way it looks. So when you see something brand new, you're like, aha, my eyes, like what what did you do? So yeah. But I think it will. And just kind of going off that as well, I don't think it's a direct question I have, but I think the animations were something where I don't really care, but I can't remember if you said you're more excited than not. I know someone on my channel commented they're really excited about the animation. So maybe you're not a huge fan of the art, but you really like the way your highwaymen now interact. So it might balance out with some of the new stuff they added.
Definitely. And I think I am one of the people that did like the animation thing, just because in the first game, their idle animations, they just kind of like bob around. And the rest of the game, the game itself, like a lot of the things are only 2 frames of animation. They have like the idle pose and then they have the attack pose. But because they did such a great job of manipulating the camera and like the blood effects and stuff that pop up, they do so much with 2 frames of animation by drawing it out and stuff like that. So going away from that can be, or like they continue that, I'm not sure, but it'll be interesting to see what they do. And I do like like I said, I am one of the people that does like the animation, like Highwayman draws his knife when you pick Wicked Slice. I think that was the example. And I do kind of like that just because it doesn't feel like the heroes are just staring at me and waiting for me to continue their existence. At least there's something going on.
Yes, yeah. And like I said, I think it's a cool feature. I just didn't I guess part of me was like, I hope you didn't intend that to be like a reason why I think this game's better, I guess. Like that's the way I looked at it. I'm like, it's cool. I definitely will not mind it, but like I hope you didn't spend an exorbitant amount of time doing it because in the end of the day, I may be concentrating on what I'm trying to do and I may not even notice him take the knife out. I mean, who knows? I could love it. I could just like literally just go through all the skills constantly, watching them do all the different animations. I could be that guy, but I don't know yet.
For sure. And besides, like, how can you market that? Who's gonna say, buy this game? They have new idle animations when you pick skills. I don't know if that's quite the selling point.
Right,
It's
and that's
just
what
a
I'm
nice
saying.
thing.
So it's like, unless they've done some weird secret research where they found out that, yes, with idle animations, like enjoyment of a game increases by 25%. It's like, like the hidden secret to life. It's so simple, but it's just so perfect. So, I mean, it could be. That's why I keep saying I think it may be this way, but who knows? I could be just blown away and be like, I can't believe I played Darkest Dungeon 1 without idle animations. Like, it doesn't even compare. I could be that. It could be that way. You don't know what you haven't played.
You don't know if you want it until you see it.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. All right, I think because I definitely want to talk about the artwork because I know some people were just in a tizzy, and I gotta admit, I had a little bit of like a neck cringe moment myself. I was like, ooh, that was not where I was going. But keeping on the artwork here a little bit, the wagon. Do you think that's gonna be like the equivalent to holding W down going pathways and you're going to walk into stuff, or do you think it's actually going to take a little bit of skill, like potholes in the road, or like there's possibly an enemy encounter, you decide you want to do it or not? I don't know, because from the images it looks like it'd be more of the pathways in the regular dungeons and then you go to the new area, but I'm wondering if you think as well it might be a little more involved than just holding down W.
I hope to like the bottom of my heart that it is not holding down W. Like, I appreciate that my D key gets a break from Darkest Dungeon 1, but I really just don't want to hold down W the entire time. I think that'd be a very missed opportunity. But I definitely hope it's the latter, like you were saying. I hope it's a couple branching paths or I hope that I can pick a couple battles that I want to, or I can pick the events or curio and whatnot. And I hope that there is some type of skill involved. When you mentioned hitting a pothole, I just thought, like, wouldn't that be some garbage or something? You hit a pothole and get like 5 stress on someone. Is that going to be the gameplay?
Yeah, no, that'd definitely be interesting. That's why I was wondering, because they kind of mentioned the whole driving the wagon, but then like maybe I missed in the article, but I kind of felt like that's where it stopped. They were like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna drive the wagon." I'm like, "All right, like, well, what? Oh, okay, we get to a crossroads. Now I have to decide." I'm like, "But you kind of did that in the first one too, Like you got to a new room, you're like, oh, I have 3 paths." So I was curious if you had any thoughts on that, because I didn't read anything that screamed like, "Oh yes, you must dodge and stop for people along the side of the road to help them," and stuff like that.
The only thing I remember seeing about the wagon is just the fact that, like you said, there can be crossroads. You can talk to some people, and I think that's it. Besides, you can upgrade it. You can upgrade the wagon a little bit. I think what are the examples, or what were they? They gave us crow's
Is the
nest.
what? Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Is the
well,
wagon also gonna hold your torch?
that's what it seems like. So you get
Yeah.
the torch in the back, and that's more of a morale thing this time. And the 3 things they said we can do with the wagon are, there's going to be a crow's nest, which gives you scouting. I know scouting is kind of a mixed bag. It's pretty powerful in the first game, so I hope they like
Yeah.
tone
So
it
say
down.
absolutely. Yeah.
And then you get medical equipment. This is a Battle Brothers thing where you heal passively while you drive around, which makes sense that they're trying to move away from healers. And then you get wind chimes to reduce stress, so you get like some passive benefits. I think there's probably more than that, but these are the first 3 things they gave us.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. I've actually played a lot of Battle Brother. Well,
Nice.
40-ish hours. I've done, I think, like 1.5 playthroughs. But yeah, but I like Battle Brothers, and that's one of those like, it's not necessarily. See, I struggle to say Battle Brothers is necessarily roguelike. It's just a game with permanent consequences. Because I mean,
It's
for the
the meat
most part, you
grinder.
can just, yeah, I mean, you can just kind of like dick around for however long you want to. And then one day you're like, all right, well, I guess we'll do the final event thing now. So, but I did enjoy Battle Brothers, even though I didn't necessarily understand all of its complexities. Because some people were like, oh, you can like beat the final boss with like 3 people. Here I am like struggling against like an undead army with 12. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever you say.
Man, that is a game I have not figured out, but I think
I
that's
know.
else.
Some people have, yeah. I mean, it's always amazing to see what some people like figure out in games. They're like, yeah, if you just get these stats up, you don't die. It's like, huh, all
Yeah.
right. I'm gonna kind of combine maybe the next 3 points here, so I'll just say them all now, so we can just naturally cycle through them. We'll come back to the relationships. Only 1 hero per roster, and then each of those heroes having 5 skills equipped at a time. So this is a lot of questions. We can feel free to go back and forth. Where if you just want to spiel for 5 to 6 minutes, and then we can discuss, that's up to you. I'll let you have the floor here.
Okay, so I'll start with the 1 hero per roster thing. I think I'll just like tackle one question and like give up the mic. But
Okay.
with the 1 hero per roster, I personally like this is total personal preference. I don't mind because I like never screwed around with quad squads besides like Deus Volt, and like I didn't meme with Rot Squad and stuff like that. So this is a change that doesn't really apply to me. It just feels like nothing really changed. Like at most, some heroes I took a couple doubles sometimes because some heroes do get better in pairs. Like Bounty Hunter gets a lot better with another Bounty Hunter. Houndmaster is pretty good in pairs. Some characters like Leper, 2 lepers are pretty good. 2 occultists can do some stuff. So I don't mind the lack of one thing. I know that it's for a balance purpose. It's much easier to balance one of each hero. So I know people are rightfully upset over it because they do like running that kind of stuff. But for me personally, it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, I guess the biggest I haven't ran a terrible amount of like core dual parties, but I know I'm wondering if the guys were trying to get away from like a highwayman repose cycle.
Oh yeah,
Because I
that
mean,
was
if you want to break the first game, a double highwayman repose cycle is essentially never bad. I don't know how else to say it. It's just never bad.
yeah, it was
And
another combo to add to it. Double Highwayman is absolutely brutal sometimes, especially if you can do like Antiquary and start forcing guard.
oh my gosh, yeah, no, it gets disgusting. And the only other thing I probably ever dueled comboed was holy lances. That can get pretty gnarly.
Oh yeah, very tanky backline, kill their backline.
Yeah, and if you play endless, at least the way I set up my squad was double shield breakers. If you have the DLC, just
That was another one.
impale rotations. Other than that, yeah, I agree with you. I think if you wanted to make a strong party for anywhere, you usually ended up picking one of each character, whether who they were, who knows. But so I guess the biggest issue I had with it was it just feels like it limited the creativity right away. But I don't mind that if your heroes, and this kind of builds into the relationship thing as well, as long as your heroes, I guess, give enough unique experiences and you can like tag team up or like have really fun battle interactions, you may feel like, how do I want to say it? You may feel like it's even more fun now that you have like all these people actually acting out their personalities. Because in the first game, I mean, your bounty hunter, besides maybe saying lines a bounty hunter would say, didn't really have any interactions of a bounty hunter. They weren't like really invested in bosses. They didn't get necessarily like, let's say, like a virtue from fighting a boss. Like, because how they're trying to make out the highwayman this one is like, oh, he wants to rob people along the road, while the man at arms is like, let's give them food. That's very interesting. I really like that. I wanted the first game to have those kind of stuff, and it sounds like they're doing it. So that's why I'm okay with it if they do it right. If they kind of drop the ball on relationships and class-specific interactions, I feel like it'll be a blunder because you'll have just slightly upgraded individuals from the first one, but without the creativity now.
I totally agree, specifically because the relationship thing is something they're pushing. It's a new feature. It sounds fun. It sounds interesting. So I feel like this is something they may not get it right at first, but it is something they have to get right at some point because this is a big difference and it sounds like it's going to be very fun. So if they do drop the ball on it, that will be kind of a black eye in this case.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be massive because they got rid of stress. They came up with the meltdown thing and the development of the relationships. I mean, it really is going to be. I mean, gosh, it feels like it's going to be like a third of the game, to be honest. I mean, like, it's going to be in combat, it's going to be out of combat, and it's going to be things you carry to the end of the game. So I would argue, yeah, if they completely bungle it, I mean, they're going to have to, like, really look back through and be like, oh, how do we fix this before. Because I feel like if they mess up at main release, it's going to be a rough time, like, trying to redeem themselves, essentially.
For sure. And you can't, like, I'm not saying anything during what you just told me, but like I was nodding enthusiastically the whole time because I totally 100% agreed.
Yeah, so that's why I want to. Yeah, so that's relationships. I think it'll be, if done correctly, I think it will absolutely trump the first game because as already stated, I think that's where the first game really lacked, and I think a lot of people secretly wanted that, where their comments kind of hint, where you could see people like filling in their own stories how it would work out. I'm not always a fan of games telling you how you should think or feel. But if the game does it just on the right level where you can still make your own story, but the characters also kind of like help indulge you, it might be like the perfect combo.
As long as there are choices, because this kind
Yes.
of game, it's supposed to be tactical and stuff. The first game was as well. And
Hmm.
as long as you are always given choices that have consequences, I think they're like theoretically on the path that they should be on.
Yeah. So I will admit that honestly, the relationship thing is probably the thing I'm single handedly most excited slash interested in. Because for the most part, I mean, the early access is going to have 8 returning characters and 1 new character. I mean, sure, the 8 are going to have different skills and stuff, but they're going to feel familiar even though they may be almost completely different. So they really need to make those 8 characters kind of like pop to life, so to say, for like the early access folks. Because you don't want to feel like you're playing the first Darkest Dungeon, but in a roguelike. I think that'd be a crime almost.
Exactly. With the relationships too, something I want to add is
Yep.
a uh, a point that I've heard a lot is people say I want to care about my characters, and I think the relationship system is the thing to do. And I also think, in a way, too, kind of backwards, is limiting your team to one character per roster, like one of each class. I think that's another thing that's going to help you care for your characters. And maybe it's just because I played so much of the game. I honestly don't care about my characters in a lot of
Oh, yeah.
cases. They're just disposable at this point. Like the only time I get upset with losing one is like, oh man, my shield breaker had Luminous and like Slugger, so I'm upset that she died. But
Yeah.
the rest of them, I'm like, I don't know. They just feel like pawns. So
No, I know and I know I've gotten in trouble for that too because like you said, after a while you play enough, you kind of know like, and especially if you're not playing on the hardest difficulty, you know losing a character as it may be annoying. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. You're like, all right, 10 people come in a stagecoach, pluck one out, throw them in. Like it's yeah. So I do understand that, and I've gotten yelled at for people who are like, oh, why did you just let 3 people die? I'm like, why not? I got a coach full of them, and they cost me nothing. They got me 20,000 gold. Like that's profit, guys.
now you're thinking like the ancestor. Good job.
Right, exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, and that's kind of the point of the game is, like eventually you're like, oh, if they die, they die. The only time I get really mad is when I have one unique class that I don't like leveling. So the Man at Arms and Antiquarian, I despise losing one of them because my next closest one is like a Resolve 2. I'm like, now I gotta bring you all the way up to 6. But but yeah, I feel you. You do the characters, and I'm always fascinated and like thrilled when people are like, "Oh, I had a favorite highwayman." I'm like, that's a interesting thought. I'm like, I can't ever say outside of Dismas and Reynold, I had a quote unquote like favorite specific hero. Like I love the leper, but that's like the class. I could give a crap if his name is Clarence, Troy, or Felix. You know what I mean? Like I just like the class. So I do think that is a potentially huge void the one hero roster will fill. Now, what's interesting is, do you think you're just going to start with all of them, or do you think you're going to kind of pick them up along the way? And if you lose a guy, you lose him, but you can like re-pick up a highwayman. So if you lose one like in the first act, well, once again, we don't know how the acts are going to work, but if you lose one, do you think you're ever going to be able to get one back, or do you think for the next 6 hours you're like, well, there goes my plague doctor. Like I'm done.
I think I'm actually not sure which way it's gonna go, but I think they should leave it as permadeath because if they want you to care about your characters and have relationships and stuff, I think being able to pick up another highwayman on the side of the road, I think that kind of does a disservice to the first highwayman. And I think that it takes away the feeling from the player where they go, if I lose a character in the first region or whatever it is, and I know I'm going to get it back in the second region, I think that kind of takes away the dread where if you have the situation where you get some super boss awesome trinket from the first boss and you're like, okay, I can complete the game. This goes on my grave robber, for instance, and then you lose your occultist. It's like, can I finish the game? Well, my grave robber is like superhuman at this point, so maybe I should just try and push through. And I think those are more interesting choices than being able to get extra heroes afterwards, especially because they want to focus on permadeath still being a thing. So I hope you can't get replacements in that run, but I could be in the like minority opinion on that one.
No, I could definitely go both ways, and the only way I guess I could justify picking someone up along the way is they would essentially be like damaged goods, because I guess what I'm gonna say is like, what kind of individual are you gonna pick up in that environment? You know what I mean? It's not like you're going to potentially some nice inn where this guy's been randomly killing monsters for 2 years. Like if you're like in some back alley and you meet a dude, you're like, hey, there's a roster spot open, but you look kind of shady, guy. Comes with klepto, has relationship skills that don't work with anybody. So if they did something like that, I would be okay with it. Like, yeah, you can get a highwayman, but man, is he gonna be almost more pain than maybe he's worth.
That is fair. And if they go that way, then I think I could get behind that because the damaged goods aspect, like the damaged goods choice versus a warm body choice, I think that's a good choice to make.
So yeah, but because I don't know if they were particularly clear on that. Like you said, they were definitely clear on when they're dead, they're dead. But I'm more curious on, and this is where I think actually now I'm thinking about it. Sorry, I'm off script here. I think they're not gonna have the leveling system, because if they give you all the characters from the get go, everyone's gonna have to like just kind of like level together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that.
So I think. Yeah, so I think they are just going to give you everyone from the get-go and say, hey, you have the ammunition, you have the people to get through this game, go for it. Because if you get up to like 14 or 15 people right away, more times than not, I'm thinking theoretically you should be able to finish the game, especially since it seems like healers aren't really mandatory anymore. I was super pumped to not see the Vestal return. I may get a crap ton of hate messages for that. I think the Vestal was such a boring character. I put her at my C on my hero tier solely because of the fact she is a divine word or divine comfort spam bot. Like she did nothing.
Man, you know what? If you got people coming at you, I will stand in solidarity.
All right.
Vestal, like, she's a necessary evil in that type of game. But I was sad Crusader didn't come back, but I think that's because the story aspect seems to be like the religious sect in the game probably like went nuts. So I'm thinking that's where it's gonna go. So that's why you're probably not gonna get Crusader and Vessel and like Flagellant. But
That's fair, yeah.
yeah, but I like the Crusader, or not Crusader. I like the Vessel isn't coming back. Like I use her for sure. Like I understand her importance. I understand people like her. So I'm not trying to say like, here's my thumb in your eye for liking a character, but I think that Vestal in the first game created a dependency. So I'm sorry if I'm earning you downvotes on this video right now, but I
Oh
think
no,
that
it's all good. Like I said, I have fought off many of people on my tier video still to this day who say Vestal C's tier. The fuck? I'm like, hey, like if the occultist was able to do 1 to 27 on his healing, I would almost never take the Vestal anywhere. Like if he was guaranteed not to get a 0 at one point, man, would he like almost always be my healer. But of course, it's always the 0 crit bleed in the death's door. Everyone always jokes about, but it only takes once for you to be like, man, if that was a Vestal, like I would still have my character.
Yeah, But there are a couple things. They also ignore the times where like you're at death's door and a cultist crit heals you for like 48.
Yeah.
You're just topped off like, oh shit, I'm back in it. Sorry for
Yeah.
swearing. But
Oh no, you're fine. I usually don't swear in my regular videos, but this is more of an open podcast, and I don't really care. I've had one heck of a week, so go for it. I don't really care.
no, I trust me. I'm in the same opinion. Like I know that YouTube is pretty mean about that, so I don't do it in my videos too. Like I swear on stream, but I don't swear in my videos if I can
Yeah,
help
I
it.
got you.
But the thing I was getting at is Vestal, she creates a dependency where you get these people that are just like, I need Vestal in every team or my team doesn't function. And she does her job very well. She heals consistently for good amounts. Divine Comfort, the group heal, is like probably one of the most broken skills in the game.
Oh yeah, hands down. Yeah.
Yeah. And then she packs a stun on top of that. So she's got a lot going for her. But I think in terms of team building, moving out of I need a dedicated healer type of team, I think though that makes teams way more fun. Like some of the most fun teams I've had are you have like a plague doctor is the only person that can heal another unit, and then everyone else has like self heals. Those are some really fun spaces to be in. So if you don't have Vestal anymore, I think that's going to open up team building a bit more. If not, at the same time, making it a bit more frustrating sometimes, especially for like newer players.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And speaking about the skills and stuff, we'll combine these little next two here. So the 5 skills option is very interesting, and I guess we'll just kind of also talk about the token system. So I know we really haven't hit on either, so I'll give you the floor here if you want to give your 2 cents about those two topics.
Okay, so the 5 skills thing, I think it's interesting because right now you can pick 4 out of 7 skills, and they're saying you can pick 5 out of 11 in the next one. So it's almost the same percentage, like 4 out of 7's a bit over half, then 5 out of 11's a bit under half. So it feels like it's going to be the same in a lot of aspects, and it's going to make some of those marginal skills that you couldn't take before, like you couldn't justify, like toxin trickery. I think because they brought that back and they called it absinthe, but I still recognize you toxin trickery, bringing your BS back to this game, and
Yeah.
having the ability to pick something like that, not have it be a net negative on your character. I think it's a step in the right direction, but at the same time, I think being able to pick so many skills is going to lead to this thing of having like quote unquote solved heroes. In the first game, I know there are a couple characters like that. Like Leper felt like a solved hero, and that doesn't mean that they're bad in that
But they were
regard.
very one-dimensional, yeah.
Yeah, they're one dimensional, and you always took like the same 3 or 4 moves. Like Leper to me is always Chop, Solemnity, and Intimidate, and then like your choice of fourth. Grave Robber
Yep.
is always Lunge, Shadow Fade, and Pickaxe. Highwayman is always Duelist, Point Blank, Pistol Shot. Like there are a lot of characters that are solved. Vestal is like the same 4 every
Oh
single.
my gosh, I say yeah, she has 0 variation, yep.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that the rest of the moves are diverse enough to where you can find a reason to put them on or swap to them. But it's tough. Like I wouldn't mind if it was like 4 out of 11, so it's like more restricting and the choices are tougher. But we'll have to see. Like I don't know if I can make a firm decision on if it's good or bad until I see like an entire skill loadout for one character.
Yeah, I'm hoping they just stick with what I really appreciate about the first Darkest Dungeon and what sometimes mods didn't always click with me were the skills were very basic, but together they with a group they became complicated. So I'm hoping if they do have once they do have all 11 skills is I'm hoping I don't need to like whip out like a dictionary and stuff and be like, all right, so if they have this ability and then if they do that, then the enemy gets debuffed and I get buffed, and on the second turn it's like, can we just get some chops in there where like, hey, it does this damage on this? Like I'm just hoping they don't go too crazy per each skill, because you've played mods and you know what I'm talking about
Oh
probably.
yeah,
Like when
dude,
you're like
mods.
reading a skill, you're like, why did you make this a paragraph? Like, oh my gosh, like I can't I
Yeah,
can't comprehend this during the battle.
yeah, dude. Like they're the mod characters, like I know it's difficult to create one and be creative and make it sound cool and fun. Like I totally understand that. And I respect anyone trying to go for a lot of complexity, but no joke. One of the reasons I stopped playing my mod campaign is I go, okay, I want to try this character, and everything's a freaking paragraph. And it's like I don't
Yes,
want to
yep.
sit here for 10 minutes and learn how this works and then go, okay, can I put them with this class? And then read all of their paragraphs and put them together.
Yeah, the mods were definitely, I feel like, made like, because I made the same mistake. I made like a pure mod campaign and I threw just like every modded character together, and not no lie, probably around week like 75, 80, I was like, I know how 8 of these classes work. I'm so thrilled. And people were like, what about this class? I'm like, I never learned it. Like, please don't ask.
There's a reason they're level 1 still.
Yes, I'll say exactly. Like, I know you love that class, but the problem is I have zero familiarity among the other classes. I have zero, like, and some characters were like, I'm like, man, would they work great with like a leper or a bounty hunter or highwayman? I'm like, but everyone is a unique butterfly and none of you gel together. Like, you are all so jankety together. And that's my fault, but it's just kind of funny when you jam a bunch of mods together.
Definitely went down the same wrong path, like 100 plus mods. Like, what am I doing
Yep.
with my life? Reviewing my life choices. Maybe I should have went to a different school at this point. I don't know, man.
Yeah, so yeah, no, the 5 skills, I think one last thing is I'm wondering if they're gonna do maybe what the armor, when we were talking about the armor path, I'm wondering if you are gonna have like the 5 offensive skills for the leper, and then you're gonna have like the 4 or 5 defensive skills. The man at arm has an aggressive side, but he also has, like the protective side. And I'm wondering if that's like where the line gets drawn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that'd be cool. Like, I wouldn't mind having clear cut directions. Like, I can take 4 defensive skills with man at arms and then just take
Mm-hmm.
touch. Like, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I'd want that.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, because with that many skills, at least that's what it screams to me, is like, oh, you have like 2 or 3 kind of like, you don't say it's this kind of class, but like hush hush, like, yeah, this is for your damage leper, or this is for your utility occultist, where this is for your like your pure damage. I don't know. So I am interested to see what they do with the jester. Do you think, and this is just a side note, do you think he's gonna be as good in this game now that accuracy is gone, or do you think there's gonna be like, they didn't mention anything about like precision tokens? I feel like the tokens and actually, yeah, we can segue a little bit into this. I feel like the tokens are gonna be, you either get rid of them or you just kind of like counterbalance. I'm not sure how it's gonna work, because like if someone gets a dodge, can I get like a accuracy or precision token and we cancel, or do I need to invest in abilities to remove tokens? You know what I mean?
That is a good point. I think, because I know they have crit tokens. They mention those by name, but
Mm-hmm.
having precision tokens, I think that'd be cool. Like, to counter the dodge tokens out there. So that could be something. All I know is if I plug myself here, I made a video talking about like changes I would make to the first game, if I was in
Okay.
the
Yep.
driver's seat. And one thing I would plead with Red Hook is, do not give us something as strong as Battle Ballad a second time. It's 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 giving your characters like 2 extra
uh,
trinkets in one ability, and then you stack it.
I say stack it 3 times. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm hoping. I don't know. Jester seems like he's gonna be a tough one, because if you take away accuracy, which is like the thing he gave you besides speed and crit,
Critical. Yeah.
yeah, you take that away, things get a little different. And then depending on how stress works, I think there still is stress, but it's just like, it looks like it works differently. So having him with different buffs and then having stress heal, like, what does he have after that? He has damage and like finale. He has bleed damage.
He has mediocre bleed damage, and then yeah, dropping a bomb. Yep.
Yeah, so I Jester feels like he has the most potential to go under a heavy rework. So I'm really curious to see what they do with him. And I think he's a character that might do something like his buff. He could give your entire party crit tokens with Battle Ballad. It could be something like that absurd.
They could, yeah, and,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping they somewhere, and they don't obviously have to say it now, but I'm hoping somewhere eventually they're like, hey, when we say token, this is what we mean. Like, I don't want it to be like guessing, like, oh, I have a crit token. Does that mean I crit automatically, or is it a 10%? So I'm hoping that somewhere, and this is where once again the first Darkest Dungeon I feel kind of lacked. I hope they have like a clear and cut manual where they say these are what the tokens are, these are what they do, and then you hop in the game or something.
Yeah. And I think too that the tokens are interesting because it just sounds like they're gonna straight up replace a lot of the previous mechanics. So like the buff debuff, dodging, I don't know, whatever else is there. Like they talk about
Mm-hmm.
team up tokens. So it feels like there's a lot of stuff they can do. And just when you were talking about it right now, I was thinking like, kind of going back to what you're saying too about the dodge tokens stacking. Maybe they could do something like you stack up team up tokens on someone, then when you hit 3, your whole team attacks that person. Like there could be a
Yeah.
lot of interesting things they could do with them, but it's really just how creative they want to be, and I guess like what the foundation is. Because if it's a bad foundation, like your crit tokens are 5% extra crit, and that's like, oh, I didn't crit, so there goes my crit token. Like that could feel pretty bad.
Yeah, and the tokens have me a little because for the most part, I don't mind the fact that like bleed and blight are tokens because I mean at that point I feel like it's like tomato tomato. It's like, well, what do you call the bleed and blight in the first game? I mean, it's essentially a place holding token. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
damages you per turn. So, but the only ones that sounded kind of weird were the crit, protection, and dodge. Because it's like, well, now we get into a weird like territory. Like how permanent are tokens? How many rounds? So I'm curious to see on how they do the token system. I think it has good potential, but my only worry was it would become almost too formulaic. Like, oh, I get 3 tokens here every round, and we just always win. Like, and I think I have that somewhere. I think it's my final question, and we'll just kind of combine them since we're near the hour mark here. My main concern was the game was going to get too simple. That they took a lot of the criticisms from the first game and said, all right, for the new people, like, we're not going to do it. Like, oh, you hate RNG and missing? Boom, no accuracy. We're going to make it easy to understand. Like, dodge tokens, set percentage now. So that may not be true, but that was one of my initial gut reactions was like, I hope they don't make it too simple because what I perceive to be a smaller sect of the community were reviews to be like games too hard. You know what I mean?
The first game definitely had the reputation of being too difficult, which I feel is a bit unwarranted. The first game, like I'm not trying to sound like an elitist
Get
here.
good.
Yeah, like I'm not trying to say that, but
No, and I understand it.
yeah, the first game it wasn't like it had a barrier to entry. Like it was a little tough at first understanding it was mostly the movement mechanics and like all the other not RPG stuff because I feel like the first game wasn't that complex. Like the out of battle stuff, managing the town is a little much at first.
Mm-hmm.
The positioning mechanics, those are actually pretty in depth, so I could see that being a new thing. Like I kind of struggle with that at first. Then you have enemies like the Warrens that just don't care where you put them for the most
Oh
part.
yeah,
But
yeah.
um, so I don't feel like the first game was overly complex. It did this thing where there's so much dice rolling that if you got unlucky a couple times, it could feel complex. But
Yes,
honestly,
yep.
once you knew the break points and like 95 is the hit cap for accuracy, if you knew those
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things, like Cult of Switch has 34 dodge a champion. Like once you started picking up on those things, I feel like the complexity in the first game really went down quite a lot. And the only times you were really paying attention anymore was like, oh, the witch that could resist my stun by 10%, like she got 2 10% in a row. Like
Right,
now
as
I'm in
say,
trouble.
yes, yep. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think what really turned people off, and I don't think it's gonna be fixed in this game, was the lack of knowledge in the first one was just I mean, it's literally just devastating. I mean, like if you didn't know what a an altar did and you put a torch in there, I mean, welcome to the Shambler. I would argue one of the probably hardest bosses in the game to randomly stumble upon. And you're like, oh, I lost my whole party because I did this curio. And, like that is just so deflating. So that's why I feel like a lot of people on top of the RNG as well, they're like, everything kills me, every choice I make is bad, and there's RNG. They're like, I'm done. It's like, well, 2 of those you can fix right away. And debatably, RNG, you can reduce that to almost nothing. But some people, it does take work. I know I got to a point in my first campaign, I refused to look anything up, and it was brutal. I got to like the second darkest dungeon, and I gotta admit, there was like a wall where I was like, yo, I've played this game so much and I've taken so much pain and I'm still going through like crap I don't know yet. So I actually took it felt like a half year hiatus, and then I came back and beat it, and then I really got into it. But But yeah, I'm wondering if they're gonna have the same level of like getting pure dunked on for not knowing what stuff does. I'm assuming yes, but I don't know.
They probably will, and there's like two sides to that. The first is in terms of like eldritch mysteries and Lovecraft and all that, like the thing that's supposed to be scary and punishing is the unknown. So
Mm-hmm.
I can see why they would limit the information they give you. But on the other hand, you have to think about the player enjoyment. When the player doesn't know anything and they're dying and they don't know why they're dying, that is a bad time. There's nothing more frustrating in a game, or few things are more frustrating to me, where like something happens, I lose someone, I'm like, I don't know why that happened. Like, I don't know what to fix. I don't know what to look back at and understand what caused this. So I'm hoping the next game does better on giving the player information. I think the chance for it to be too simplistic, I think it's there, but I'm hoping that between the tokens and their stated mission, like they say it in the article that they want to make the game more complex, like they want to make the fight
Correct. Yep.
into puzzles instead of slugfest. I think that was the terminology they used. So I'm thinking if they can do what they set out to do and make the mechanics that they're putting in more fun and complex to interact with, I think they can make a more advanced type of game. So it's kind of weird because at the same time they're trying to go to bring in new players because a lot of players just haven't beaten the game. Like that a statistic is like
Yes. Yeah.
something like only 2% of people actually finish the damn game. Like that
Oh, really? Holy cow! I didn't
it's
know it was that
something low.
low.
It may not be 2%, but it is something like very low. And I think they're worried about that, so they're making the game shorter so it's easier to quote beat, you know? And then they're trying to change the system to make it less punishing. So they're trying to have both things, I feel like. They want to make the game more complex so it's like more fun to interact with the stuff and you feel better for knowing it and knowing how it works. And at the same time, they're trying to make it more accessible. Like I don't want to say casual friendly because I feel like that has a negative connotation, but they're trying to make it more accessible. So they're trying to do
Right.
both things at once, and that can be a little scary from the outside.
Yeah, and the only thing, and I think where it might become too simple is actually by like I really liked Hades, and I keep saying this in all my comments and other videos because it was a roguelike in the sense that you climb levels, you fight places, it's random. But once you got out of the dungeon area where you fight, there was a story, there was upgrades, there was interactions that kept you tied in. I don't know. I don't think they mentioned it, and I'm wondering if they like maybe they're gonna keep it as like a main release thing or something they're working on. But in between campaigns, I hope there's like something you can take along from other ones and like they reward you for essentially playing the game once. Because if it's like, oh, you just restart fresh every time, it's like by the third or fourth time, you're like, why am I always climbing the same like 7 hour tower? You know what I mean? Like, I don't keep anything. At this point, I've seen what some of the relationships can do. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the replayability may be done after like 28 to 35 hours.
It's definitely possible, and that's a fear to have. So I get it, and I think because I didn't play Hades, I watched Hades, but I don't quite
Okay.
know how heat works. But I think if it's
Oh
anything
yeah.
like
Okay.
I don't know if it's like Slay the Spire. Slay the Spire has ascensions, so you have unlocks as you progress through the game. Like you level the heroes, you get unlocks, and then just as you get further, you just get more stuff. Like you get more trinkets you can pick up in that game, more cards become available. And so that's like one direction for it. But then after you've unlocked everything, they have ascensions, which is like every time you beat the game, you can up the difficulty just like incrementally. So it'll be like regular
Okay.
enemies have more HP, then you beat that game, and then it'll be like the same thing. Regular enemies have more HP, but then also bosses have new move sets. So if you can do something like that and incrementally crank up the difficulty, I think that would not necessarily remedy the fact that you don't carry a lot of stuff over, because I do understand people don't like that. But I think as long as you give someone a reason to boot the game back up, I think that is good enough.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And to come back to Heat and Hades, yes, exactly that. You could pick enemies have 40% more health. They do 20% more damage. Enemies spawn twice as much. So yeah, it sounds like it's exactly the same. Yeah. And the only other thing is too, what could be fun is what I also ripped on Darkest Dungeon 1 for was if you don't always face the same bosses. If each level has like a boss or two, so you're like, ooh, I'm curious on which boss I get this time, rather
Yeah.
than like, okay, we're going into the wheel today to beat on the poor hag 3 times in a row.
That was something Iratus did. I didn't even know that was a thing because like I beat the game the first time and I started playing it again and I got to the first boss. I'm like, wait, this isn't the first boss. And someone was like, oh yeah, you unlock like an extra boss for each thing and it's like randomized each time. And I was like, okay, that's pretty
Yeah, see,
cool.
yeah, see, that is pretty cool, and that's something small where you're like, I normally know which team to take in, but now that it's a new boss, I am slightly thrown off. So I think that'd be enough to increase your 2 to 3 playthroughs to easily like 6 to 8. So I think there's a lot of ways they can easily make the game super replayable, even for it being more of a traditional roguelike, which I'm not a huge fan of. However, I do see I have played some and I have enjoyed them, and I do understand certain pathways that are like I said, I always come back to Hades because I feel like that's like a roguelike that bridges the world between people who like don't want to sit there and grind through the same stuff and never keep anything, but at the same time have like story outside. So I think Hades did it well. Faster Than Light, I know you get different ships. Slay the Spire, like you said, you get different cards. But there's a few roguelites out there, and I don't even remember their name because that's how little I played them, where like you just restart fresh every time. I'm like, those are personally my least favorite ones.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Is there anything else you would like to say about your own channel, about Darkest Dungeon 2, anything else you're doing? Where I think we've pretty much gone over the 8 core questions I had with a little bit of branching pathways as well as I thought we would. So I'll let you just kind of say whatever you want, and then we can wrap this up.
Well, I think you did fantastic because I saw these 8 questions and I know like during this conversation a couple times I just spiraled off on tangents and stuff. So props to you for keeping everything corralled and focused. As far as the second game goes, I don't think there's anything kind of left on the table. Like I'm curious what the new hero is. I wouldn't like if they get rid of Crusader. I wouldn't be surprised if they just put in a knight, but I feel like that's kind of weak, and I wish they wouldn't do something like that. But I don't know. As far as the game goes, I am excited. I just like new things, and I feel like I played the first game enough to where I don't mind leaving it behind for a couple years at this point. Like I definitely want something new. I think some of the changes do like some of them sound great, some of them kind of scare me a little bit. So I'm curious to see what happens, but I'm personally trying to keep an open mind about it. And I feel bad, saying things like I'm glad Vessel's not in it because I can say something like that because my favorite character's in it and that's Grave Robber.
Right. Yep.
So like I know there are characters that are going to get left behind. I don't think all of them are going to get left behind, and if they do, there are modders who are going to put them in as quick as they can.
Oh
So
yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't worry too much, but we'll see how it goes. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just second those notions. People also have to remember it releases Q3, but it is early access. So whatever you see on either my channel or Shuffles, remember those things can possibly change. There will be new heroes. I know they didn't say how many they planned on going to, but they're definitely not stopping at 9. So as I said, the next half year here, give the game a base chance because it's going to be very different by I mean, it's definitely going to be very different by this time next year because I don't know if it's going to be out for a full 6 months, and it'll have about 3 to 4 months of early access. So we'll give them about 4 to 8 months to correct themselves. And you also have to remember, I wasn't there for it, but I will be this time. Darkest Dungeon 1 was not like the completed game when it came out. There was a lot of reworks to heroes' skills, bosses, how items and icons looked, I believe. So keep that in mind as well if you're a little skeptical.
Well, I'll definitely piggyback on that one because that was the next point that was brewing in my head when you're talking about that fantastic set of stuff right there. The thing, like, I don't know how many people know this. Back in early access, like the original early access Darkest Dungeon, there were no corpses. corpses were something that were added later on the monster side, and people were livid when that happened because it completely changed how you had to play the game. Because what people used to do is just shred through the front line like in 2 turns, and then all the back line was up in front of
That's
them,
how
and
they
then they
got
just
shoved
killed
up
them.
front. Yeah.
Yeah, so you didn't need any backline damage. You didn't need reach. Leper became, an even bigger beast than he already is, and people were upset about that change, and it turned out to be the right change for the game. So I'm thinking that I can at least give, I don't know, Red Hook some faith tokens if I can use their own stuff here,
Yeah.
where
Very nice.
I'm gonna trust them to a point. Like I think they can get it right. It may take a couple tries, but I think at like by the time it comes out entirely, they will get it right. But even on that point too, the last major update for the game was Color of Madness, and they changed like how the entire game was when that came out. So that was a big deal. So like
They
don't
did. Yeah.
so don't think that what early access is what release is going to be, and don't think what release is going to be what it is in 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know I still have some people, and I don't know how long they've been away from the game, but when they see like an Abomination and Vestal together, they're like, "Are you modding?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "It's just a game." Like, I don't know what to say. You can have you can have like 3 Abominations, 1 Vestal, and no one's weirded out by it.
I don't know. I'm a little weirded out by it just seeing that team on paper.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's your own path, but like, yeah, because I've had someone like, "Oh, like, is this a mod run?" I'm like, And at first I didn't understand. I was like, what's tipping you off that this is a mod run? He's like, oh, Vestal and Abomination. I'm like, when's the last time you played the game? Because I went and searched the patch notes and I saw it was in Colors of Madness. I was like, wow, their last DLC, they made that change.
I'm pretty sure it's because they just like if they kept internal statistics, it would be like, oh, no one plays Abomination because everyone likes taking best.
I say everyone wants the Vestal, yeah.
So
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Shuffle. It's been a pleasure. I'm sure as we see more when the game comes out, we may have a discussion like this again if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks for
And
having
I
me.
can easily pop onto your channel then, so we can have a little back and forth.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to work out the specifics then. But big thanks to you, sir, for setting this up. It was a pleasure. It didn't even feel like an hour. I remember looking at the clock. It's like, oh, it was 4:30, which was 2 hours ago for me. Now it's 6:30.
Yeah. No. Yep. I was wondering because I was like, this is either going to be like a 2-hour conversation where we're going to hit 45 minutes and be like, the cultist has got a cool bandage on his head, like. So I'm glad we hit the sweet spot right there.